1. Lab is destroyed. I need immediate support. Please come back.
Oh, hey, Vsauce! I'm Jake, and boy, is it good to see you. I didn't know that you had survived the lab. But good news, I think that I killed the parasite, or if I didn't, it'll at least freeze to death in the cold. And I have never seen anything like that. A parasite that can actually take over the human body. What makes that parasite unique, or what made it unique, is that in general, humans aren't as susceptible to the influence of parasites. However, in Kathleen McAuliffe's book, This Is Your Brain on Parasites, she gives an interesting example. If a cold germ makes you cough, is that your body trying to clear the infection from your lungs, or the parasite tickling the back of your throat so that you'll spread the germ? It's the manipulation hypothesis, when a parasite purposefully changes the behavior of the host, and it does this to increase its chances of transmission to spread. An example of this can be seen in humans with the guinea worm, which gets into your body through stagnant water. In that water, there might be water fleas which carry the guinea worm larvae. Our stomach acid dissolves the flea, but not the larvae, the parasite. It grows into worms that push inside the intestinal walls and procreate in your abdominal muscles. The male worms die and get absorbed by your body, but the female grows and continues to grow until it's about 1 meter long. It spreads its way through your connective tissue, making its way to a lower extremity, your foot, calf, etc. And it stays there for about a year inside the host without you knowing. And by this point, the female has a lot of larvae, so it releases an acid that makes your skin blister and boil. So your body's reaction is to dip that pain into some water, and in doing so, the female ejects all of the larvae from her mouth, hundreds of thousands of them, back into the water, completing the life cycle and starting anew. And then there are some parasites that, unlike the guinea worm, don't keep themselves hidden inside you. Instead, like in the case of the green-banded broodsac, they change your appearance. A snail unknowingly eats bird droppings infested with broodsac eggs. The eggs hatch inside the snail, forming long tubes that spread into the snail's brain and tentacles, its eye stalks. It fills the stalks up so fully that it stretches the walls so thin that you can see the parasite through it, colorful and pulsating. And those pulsating bands are broodsac larvae. Because the parasite has pretty much taken over the snail's eyes, it is visually impaired. It spends a lot more time out in the sun because it can't tell the difference between dark and light. And a bird sees this, sees those pulsating eye stalks, and goes, hey, those look like some delicious caterpillar grubs. So it swoops on down, takes a bite, flies back up, but now it has broodsac larvae all up in its stomach, and they're reproducing. And the eggs then go into the bird droppings, creating the cycle again. Rinse and repeat. It's a form of aggressive mimicry. The parasite resembles the food of the predator it wants as a host, and then it uses the host as a kind of living taxi, traveling from point A to point B. It's transient. To continue its life cycle, it has to find a new home. But then there are parasites that are more insidious. They just don't use the host body as transport, nor do they use the host bodily reactions in favor of the parasite. Instead, they take over the mind. Ampulex compressa, the jewel wasp. It stings a cockroach in the thorax, temporarily paralyzing it. Quickly, it moves to the roach's head where it precisely stings and injects a poison that blocks the neural area for decision-making. taking away the cockroach's free will. The wasp then bites off the antennae of the roach, slurping out fluid from the open stems, and leads it to the wasp's burrow and lays an egg on its abdomen. The wasp then closes up the burrow, leaving the relaxing cockroach and the egg in there. About 3 days later, the egg hatches and starts eating the still alive cockroach. And what started as an ectoparasite, external, becomes an endoparasite, internal, as the larva eats its way into the cockroach. And it does it in such a way that the cockroach stays alive as the larva sucks out its intestines. And then, after that, the larva cocoons itself inside of the cockroach, bursts out as a fully grown wasp, and the host finally dies. And there are many other kinds of parasites, like cordyceps that sprout out of an ant's head and rain spores down onto other ants, or ones that take over the tongues of fish. There's even one that an estimated half the human population has that you can get from cat feces. More than 1,400 parasites prey on humans, and those are just the ones that we know about. With some parasites, you don't even know that they're in you. They stay hidden as a survival tactic. Others can take you over completely, which brings us to a parasite that most resembles the one that we were facing at the lab, Sacculina. Sacculina is a parasite that infects crabs. It finds a soft spot on the joints of the crab, uses a sharp part of its body, and injects itself inside. It then spreads throughout the crab like roots in the ground, creeping into organs, the nervous system, and the crab's eye stalks. It even grows a sac on the underside of the crab where the eggs would be, but are now the reproductive part of the parasite. The crab stops molting, growing, it becomes sterilized. Its purpose now is to continue the life cycle of this parasite. It loses its free will, it becomes a suit of armor, a robot being controlled by an operator. From the outside, it looks the same, it generally acts the same, but inside, is the cockroach, the crab, or the snail aware of what is happening? Does it know that it no longer has free will? Just like the bacteria in our gut, which is more plentiful than the cells in our own body, can dictate our diets without us being conscious of it, maybe a parasite could do the same. The difference being that the bacteria is in a symbiotic relationship with us. It is mutually beneficial, and in a parasitic relationship, it is not really a benefit to the host. However, parasites are important to the overall ecosystem. And when we zoom out and think about this ecosystem, it's easy to understand the philosophical idea of us and the planet we are currently on. What started out as a symbiotic relationship between humans and Earth could now be seen as parasitic. I mean, even pregnancy could be thought of as a parasitism. I don't know, sorry man, my brain has been all over the place recently. I think I've been out here for too long. I don't actually know how long I've been out here for. Okay. To me, the scariest part is, how do you know that your actions are your own? If you were to get a parasite, one that could control your body and your mind, would you ever know? I mean, how do I know that the words that are coming out of my mouth are mine? How do I know that you aren't infected? That thing at the lab could become anyone, could become any living organism. I don't feel different, but would I ever be able to tell? How do you know if your mind is lying? Maybe we should just sit here and just wait.
This is emergency control. We received your SOS. Please give us exact coordinates for rescue.
Just wait and watch the fire die.
Again, this is emergency control. Please give us
And,
coordinates for you.
as always, thanks for watching.
Nearly 300 people in 11 states have been infected. Health officials are investigating a parasite, but the CDC has not been able to nail down the source.
The CDC is reporting a rise in outbreaks of a parasitic infection. It is not easily killed and can survive up to 10 days.
WHO has been assessing this outbreak around the clock, and we're deeply concerned by the alarming levels of spread and severity.
To delay the spread of the disease, people must stay at home.
Hey, I'm Jake, and I don't know about you, but before being trapped in an apocalypse of the undead, I had two loves in my life, science and movies. So I decided to put myself in one of my favorite kinds of horror films, zombies, to learn how does a virus actually work? And more importantly, could you survive the genre? Could you survive a deadly microscopic pathogen? Having your limbs torn off by a zombie and a viral global pandemic? Hey, you know, I think this can of meat might still be good. Think fast! Could you survive a zombie movie? Okay, that was totally my fault. But the good news is those guys out there seem pretty slow, so I think we could probably outrun them, which is great because if I've learned anything from the dozens of zombie movies that I've watched, is that it only takes one bite, sometimes just a scratch, for you to become infected. Wait, you weren't bit or anything, right? Okay, I didn't think so. I was just checking. It looks like we're dealing with the classic slow-moving zombie, which was common in films from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and they were more of a metaphor for things like mindless consumerism. But then that changed in the 2000s with 28 Days Later and World War Z, where the zombie movie became more of a metaphor about viruses, and the zombie itself became this fast-moving, bloodthirsty, rage-filled beast. Which got me thinking, could a virus actually turn you into a zombie? And how exactly could that happen? If we're going to look at the science of viruses, first off, we should establish that there is no such thing as a zombie virus as portrayed in the movies. But viruses do behave like cinematic zombies in several ways. The most striking is that viruses are not alive. They only exist by hijacking a host and using it to make more copies of itself. Although most people think of viruses as germs or bugs like bacteria, they're just packets of DNA or RNA surrounded by a coat of fats or proteins. And like a zombie, they can't reproduce on their own. Instead, viruses seek out cells in a living host to start replication, whether through an open wound, an insect bite, or most commonly, inhalation. All cells have surface receptors, like a puzzle piece, that allow important things like nutrients to attach to them. A virus uses those receptors to grab a cell, then dig inside of it. Once it's there, it releases its DNA or RNA packet. That virus DNA then uses the cell to make thousands of copies that burst from the cell and infect other cells. Another diabolical thing that viruses do is force their host to help it spread. Choo! Each human sneeze puts out about 20,000 droplets that help spread respiratory viruses like rhinovirus or coronavirus. Well, I am sorry about that. That was pretty gross. I should have covered my mouth. Hey, Shelby.
Jake, oh my gosh, it's so good to see you.
It's so good to see you, too.
Have you been out there? It's insane. I mean, I know they're slow, but they're relentless.
But you seem to avoid them pretty well. You didn't get bit or anything, right? You didn't get bit.
No, it's, I was just shopping at the Umbrella Co. and suddenly there was a horde of zombies. How'd they get in here anyway?
Oh, I have no idea.
Well, I was thinking about heading to the upper level of the mall. You know, higher ground and all that.
Oh, yes, higher ground. That's a...
Yes.
Yep, good idea. Hey, you coming?
Oh, yeah.
Cool. It's crazy how quickly this outbreak has spread. I mean, as you know, modern zombie movies are really an allegory for our fear of a pandemic. And as the world is easier to navigate and easier to explore, that fear becomes more of a reality than a fiction.
Right, well, older zombie films were more of an epidemic, where the disease was isolated to a smaller area, like a single town or country. But modern zombie movies focused on the outbreak as a pandemic, something that spreads globally.
You know, it's a lot to think about. It's very interesting.
It's very interesting. I'd love to think about it somewhere else.
Oh, yes, just keep moving,
here.
because there's zombies and we're all
I
gonna
know.
die.
It's science and it's fun,
Yeah,
but we've got other stuff to think about right now. Let's go.
You know, zombies really love brains. And a brain has 2,500 calories. So, conceivably, you could survive on just a brain-a-day diet. You think the pretzel guy's stomach is in knots? But seriously, though, it's crazy how one bite just turns you into a zombie so quickly.
Yeah.
Good news is, there's no fast zombies, so that's a plus, right?
Jake?
Yeah, what's up, homie?
Fast zombies. They're coming to get you, Roper.
Run! Go, go! There's a pub up there. That should probably be a safe place.
No running in the mall.
Matt?
Come on, guys, don't run in the mall. It's dangerous.
That's my boyfriend.
Why don't you guys just run straight to the exit?
Oh.
Man, can I get that back when you're done?
Matt, behind you. Oh, I can't stop. Shelby, I am so sorry. But also, being horribly torn apart by zombies limb from limb, that takes a lot of power. Could a virus give someone that much strength? And that begs the question, how exactly does a virus work? Let's find out. You hate to see anybody get dismembered, especially my friend, and I guess Shelby's boyfriend, Matt. And sure, it's a common trope in zombie movies, but can a virus, zombie or otherwise, give you the strength to do that?
Viruses do all kinds of things to the body, but they're mostly detrimental.
Oh, hey, Dr. Brown. Why are you a video conference robot?
Well, you know, with a highly infectious disease taking over the planet, I just figured it was best that we weren't in the same room. But as I was saying, like, viruses impede normal functioning.
Makes sense, because the word virus is basically poison in Latin.
Right.
And after all, that's what it means to be sick. But the idea of a virus that makes you super fast, super smart, or super strong,
all that's science fiction.
Okay, that makes sense, but what about rabies? Doesn't that turn a pooch into some sort of super strength zombie dog?
Well, rabies is the closest thing that we have to a zombie virus. Both are spread by biting somebody. Both can cause hypersalivation or drooling, and sometimes this kind of jerky, convulsion-like movement. But although it'll amp up a dog's aggression, it doesn't cause super strength. In fact, a virus weakens its host by using the energy to replicate itself over and over and over again.
Good to know, Dr. Brown, thank you. So, as it turns out, a virus wouldn't really give you super strength. If anything, the virus would actually just weaken you. But back to our original question about dismemberment and what happened to our friend, Matt. Could you have enough strength to actually tear a person apart? Well, good news. We have this device here to answer that very question. This 4-meter-tall truss has a winch on one side and a stand-in victim on the other. Now, in between, we have a line that is rated for a pull of up to 4,500 kilograms. And then we have a dynamometer to measure the exact amount of newtons needed to tear this body apart. Let's do it. The average human male can exert about 640 newtons when pulling on an arm, which is about here. Clearly, our stand-in human is okay. But as the force of the pull is increased, we start to see the tissue and muscle tear. These connector muscles are viscoelastic, meaning they'll stretch a long time before tearing. The weakest part of the human limb is where it meets the torso. On the arm, it's called the glenoid labrium. And if you're going to tear a limb from a body, well, that's where you would need to focus. That was disgusting, but also really cool. It took 1.6 kilonewtons, that is 1,600 newtons of force, to separate the shoulder from the body. That's around 2.5 times greater than what a human being can generate. So, in real life, you don't have to worry about getting dismembered by a zombie or a person. Matt, however, well, you know, best not to think about that. Shelby, gotta say, you did a great job barricading this pub. Looks amazing. Love the initiative.
Well, thank you, but why are we even in a pub?
Oh, because a pub is the safest place in a mall. Everybody knows that. Hey, think I could get a top up on this?
Yeah,
thanks. You're a real gem, yeah.
Uh-huh, yeah. But why are we even...
Get off of her! Come on! Like I said, safest place in the mall.
But why?
Oh, because they have guns over the bar, Shelby.
Okay, but why is there even a pub in the mall?
I don't know, man. Why are there zombies all over the world? Wait, are you feeling okay? You look a little pale.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Hold on.
Huh?
Did you get bit?
No, it's just a scrape.
Oh no, you're infected. It's spreading. We gotta stop it. Come on!
No. That's not an option. That wouldn't even stop the spread, would it?
Actually, that is a great question. Would chopping off somebody's arm actually stop the spread of a virus? And for that matter, how do you even kill a virus? Here, could you hold this for me? Thank you so much. Good thing none of that blood got in my mouth, because once a virus breaches the exterior of a body by a bite, by latching onto a mucous membrane, or by an injection, it spreads throughout the body mostly via blood circulation. So, to figure out whether the old post-bite arm chop is a good strategy, we need to look at how fast blood moves through the body. Human blood flows at an average of 1.3 to 1.8 meters per second, and of course, circulates even faster when you're excited. So severing a limb off isn't a viable real-world way to combat a virus, because by the time you did it, the virus would have spread throughout your body. But there are essentially 3 categories of things that kill, or at least mitigate, a virus.
You're right, Jake. It breaks down into 3 categories, okay?
Things that the body does itself, that's your immune system. Things the body does with outside technological help, those would be vaccines. And then things that the body does without the assistance of the human immune system. And that'd be like antivirals and virucides.
Your skin, saliva, and mucus are the first line of defense to battle viruses. And also, when you get a fever from being sick, what your body is doing is increasing the temperature to try and kill said virus.
Right. But by no means are those a perfect defense. So, the next line of defense is your bloodstream,
where antibodies created by white blood cells and lymph nodes battle the virus.
The only problem is that your immune system takes a long time to figure out how to make these antibodies. And when you're battling a deadly virus, no one has the luxury of time. That's where a vaccine comes in.
Vaccines have typically been built around weakened or dead versions of the pathogens, teaching your body how to make the antibodies so it's ready if it's infected by the virus. But in the fight against COVID-19, scientists have used a new type of vaccine, mRNA vaccine, which preps your immune system to battle a virus by focusing on just a little part of the virus, say the spiky part on the end of the coronavirus. Now your body only has to look for one small piece instead of the entire thing. It's honestly pretty cool. Which leaves us with virucides, things that kill the virus outside the human body. Simple everyday items like soap and copper are incredibly effective in either killing or mitigating viruses. Soap works because the molecules are kind of pin-shaped, and the round head is hydrophilic, that is water-loving, while the long tail is hydrophobic, water-hating. So oil and water usually don't mix. But what happens if we add soap? All of those pins of soap molecules surround oil particles and rip them apart as the tail latches on to the fats in the oil. And since viruses are just packets of DNA surrounded by an envelope made of proteins and lipids, that is, fats, the same thing happens to that outer envelope of a virus when you attack it with soap. All right, buddy, I gotta go back to the pub, check on Shelby. Maybe I can still cut her arm off, then her and Matt will match. All right, I'm gonna go. Good news, Shelby. Oh, no. Oh, this isn't good, but we can fix this. Okay. You're strong, you're handsome. You can do this, Jake. No, I can't. Come get some. Oh, curse you, mall pub. What's my Deus Ex Machina? Woo! Trap door! That store literally sells 0 umbrellas. But I think this should work. And, as always, thanks for watching.
These are particles of radioactive fallout. These few particles can't do us any significant harm. But should there be a nuclear attack, many billions of them would fall from the sky and settle to Earth, releasing radiation that could cause sickness or death in the area where they fall.
Vsauce. I'm Jake, and I am glad that you found me. I was kind of worried that I wouldn't see you again before the bombs dropped. Things have kind of gotten a bit out of hand. You know, it's estimated that there are over 10,000 nuclear weapons in the world. 10,000! And depending on the size of the bomb, it could take as little as 2,500 to completely destroy all of North America, and 13,000 more to destroy the planet. Man, it's beautiful out here, isn't it? I'm gonna miss this. All right, let's get inside. Come on! Ooh. We've all seen the footage of nuclear bombs being detonated, and it is jaw-dropping. The force of it, the power. But we've also seen the damage that it causes to the surrounding area. And we tend to forget just how powerful a nuclear bomb really is. For example, since 1923, there have been over 53,000 deaths from airplane accidents. There have been over 220,000 deaths from nuclear bombs, and that's only from 2 of them. The sheer amount of destruction and death a nuclear bomb is capable of created a new unit of measurement in the 1950s, a megadeath. 1 megadeath is equal to 1 million fatalities due to a nuclear explosion. To understand just how large and impactful an explosion would be, we have to look no further than the largest nuclear device ever detonated by the United States, Castle Bravo.
photograph was taken from an airplane at 50 miles. The width of the fireball at this time, about 3 seconds after detonation, was 4 miles.
Castle Bravo had 15 megatons of TNT. The mushroom cloud went 24.6 miles high and stretched for more than 60 miles. You could see the blast from hundreds of miles away. But what we don't see is what happens after the initial blast. Once the cameras stop rolling, it no longer exists for us, but the effects of it are still there. In the case of Castle Bravo, 200 billion pounds of coral reef and seafloor were ejected. A large amount of it was pulled up into the mushroom cloud, becoming radioactive and creating fallout. As the cloud gets higher, the winds get stronger and carry the fallout away from the blast site, like radioactive seeds. Tiny particles of radioactive material can be pulled into the upper atmosphere and travel thousands of miles from the initial blast.
That fallout from the larger castle shots blanketed areas of more than 5,000 square miles with radioactive material that would have been lethal to unprotected personnel.
The island of Rongelap was 115 miles from the explosion and was evacuated 2 days after. White dust, fallout, rained down upon the inhabitants.
Some loss of hair was a frequent symptom. The lesions appeared to be directly related to the amount of fallout deposited on the skin rather than to the generalized whole-body radiation.
They couldn't return for 3 years and then had to leave again because the island was still unsafe. What's scary about a nuclear bomb isn't just the initial blast. I mean, that we can see. It's the things we can't see, like the gamma rays or the radioactive dust that looks just like normal dust. By the time you feel the effects of radiation damage, nothing can be done to reverse it. Strontium-90 is known as a bone seeker and is released by thermonuclear explosions. It gets into the soil and is absorbed by the plants, then by the animals that eat those plants, and then by the humans that eat those animals. Once inside, it mimics calcium and starts to build up in our bones. Since it has a half-life of 29 years, it keeps emitting radiation, causing bone cancer and leukemia. And to me, the most unnerving part about nuclear war and fallout are the effects that are not immediate. The ones that you don't even know you have until it's already too late, or the ones you don't know about because they affect someone further down your family line long after you're already gone. There's an obstacle course to recovery that survivors of large-scale nuclear attacks face. It goes from the first 1 to 2 days with blast and thermal, and then it can go all the way from 2 generations to several generations with genetic effects. With these bombs, the intent is not just to destroy everyone within the blast radius, or everyone who dies within a few days from radiation poisoning. It's to destroy everything they have ever known, to make their lives unlivable. As President Eisenhower said, you cannot have this kind of war. There just aren't enough bulldozers to scrape the bodies off the streets. And there is something more crippling than actually detonating a nuclear bomb, the idea of detonating it. During the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union, it was more about the capabilities and intentions the enemy thinks you have. It becomes a war of persuasion over a war of action. But there is another tactic, a doctrine of military strategy that boils down to, if you shoot at me, I'll shoot at you. But in this case, if you fire weapons of mass destruction at me, I will fire all of mine at you to make sure that neither of us wins, that everyone loses. That sounds crazy, doesn't it? But it's not crazy. In fact, it's mad. Mutually assured destruction.
People receiving 200 Roentgens or more in a short period of time will get radiation sickness. Those receiving 600 or more in a short period of time will die. For your protection, shelter is the answer, since highly dangerous doses can be produced by fallout radiation.
But how long would you have to stay underground? And would you even be safe there? Because you could always find yourself meeting a nuclear bunker buster. I'm gonna be honest with you. Surviving a fallout isn't really the question. Of course you could survive given the right preparations. Humans are resilient and will persevere through the toughest obstacles. A lethal dose of radiation wouldn't turn you into a ghoul, it would turn you into a corpse. So the real question that you have to ask yourself in this situation isn't if you could survive a fallout, it's if you'd want to. I guess it's about that time. Einstein said something relevant to this. He said, "I know not with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones." Let's lighten the mood a little bit, shall we? How about some music, huh? You know, cheer up at the end of the world. Why not?
World at war. The end is near.
Oh, yes! I love this one! This is a beautiful day for Madame Butterfly. And in it, Madame Butterfly is singing about a dream that she had where she sees a puff of smoke on the horizon, and through it, her future husband comes on his boat. He's there to rescue her, to save her from the life that she's known. However, we will not be saved, and we will not be rescued. But I can guarantee on that horizon, we will see a puff of smoke. And, as always, thanks for watching.
There is no denying that the shadow of the atom bomb has been across all our lives.
Oh, Vsauce, it is good to see you. Here, let me just take this off real quick. Gotta protect yourself from the UV rays, you know? I'm Jake. Remember we were together in Could You Survive a Fallout? You know what? Not a big deal. I'll put a link down in the description. Here I am talking like YouTube, let alone the internet, is still a thing. But at least we survived the fallout, so we could live in this. You know what's happening out there, right? Well, don't worry, I'll fill you in. You know, they say that war is hell. But that doesn't mean the aftermath is any better. I need a can opener. Do you have a can opener? Let's get a can opener. Now, we know the effects of nuclear fallout, but let's consider something which won't be difficult given our current situation. There is a relatively small nuclear war between two large countries. 100 nukes are dropped, less than 1% of the current global supply. 20 million people are instantly dead. Boom! Gone! And that sounds like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, 20 million deaths, or 20 megadeaths, is only 0.3% of Earth's population. But something worse happens, and it isn't the bombs, it isn't the fallout. It's what's left for the over 99% of the population that survives, what we're currently experiencing. Nuclear winter. Nuclear winter is a fairly recent term, having been coined about 34 years ago. In the early 1980s, a team of scientists were assembled. Turco, Toon, Ackerman, Pollock, and Sagan. Together they wrote the scientific paper, Global Atmospheric Consequences of Nuclear War. And they discovered that nuclear war might be devastating, but the shadow it casts is much larger, much more suffocating. Imagine entire cities in flames, hundreds of thousands of buildings, factories, parks, and forests burning. All that smoke is heated by the sun, lofted into the upper stratosphere, and the particles would blanket the Earth. I'd love to give you some uplifting fact, a ray of sunshine, but unfortunately all the soot would block out the majority of the sunlight, making it overcast everywhere for a very long time. And that is just the start. Obviously, for their research, they had to use climate models because to test it in real life, they would have to create an actual nuclear winter. We know how well that turned out. But they did find events in our past that helped them determine what would happen in our future. And one of those events happened 140 million miles away. In 1971, the US Mariner 9 spacecraft, the first vehicle to orbit another planet, arrived at Mars to find it completely covered in a global dust storm. What scientists discovered was the dust had been brought high into the atmosphere, absorbing the sunlight and preventing a lot of it from hitting the surface. This brought the surface temperature down tens of degrees. But that was far away on a completely different planet. So it's hard to picture temperatures dropping so drastically here because of something as small as dust blocking out the sunlight. But we don't have to imagine, nor did researchers, because it's happened before here, over 200 years ago. The Tambora volcano erupted in 1815 in Indonesia. That eruption blotted out the sun and produced global cooling of about 0.5 degrees Celsius for a year. 0.5 degree seems pretty insignificant, but it isn't. 1816 was called the Year Without a Summer, or 1800 and froze to death. In New England, frosts happened every month, killing the crops, and this was during the summer. The price of grain shot up, and with that, farmers tried selling all of their livestock since they could no longer feed them. In Europe, the stock market collapsed and widespread famine occurred. So, using that information, they were able to conclude what would happen, but that study was done at the height of the Cold War when a full-on global nuclear war was much more of a threat. Remember when I asked you to consider an attack with 100 nukes? Well, that's a lot more likely and a lot more relevant to what we're currently dealing with. So in 2009, researchers, using the original paper as a framework, estimated the effects of an attack with 100 nukes the size of Hiroshima's. Even at that relatively small scale, the attack was globally devastating, and it all starts with tiny particles. At least 5 teragrams, about 11 billion pounds of smoke, would be produced because of the fires started by the bombs. Within 2 days, those tiny particles would rise 7.5 miles into our troposphere. The sun would heat them up and they would continue to rise. After 49 days, the smoke would reach a height of 31 miles and fill the stratosphere. By this point, the soot would cover the majority of the planet, blocking sunlight and making the skies overcast. Unfortunately, precipitation doesn't reach the stratosphere, so the particles wouldn't be washed away. And speaking of precipitation, there would be a 10% decrease of it worldwide due to the lack of sun, which would cause problems with evaporation and the natural water cycle. Taking what we learned from Mars and from the Tambora volcano, the sunlight being blocked would drop global temperatures by 1.25 degrees Celsius. The cold and lack of sunlight would obviously be bad for agriculture, with crops and farm animals dying off. But something else would also be devastating to that: ultraviolet radiation. Even though the surface of the Earth would be colder, the black smoke in the stratosphere would absorb the sunlight, heating it up by more than 50 degrees Celsius. Because of that, nitrogen oxides would be lofted further up, destroying our ozone. Over 17 months, we'd go from this to this. Not only is UV radiation incredibly damaging to plants, it's also incredibly damaging to us. I'm not wearing all these layers and covering my skin just for fun. If I were to go outside unprotected, it would take just 6 minutes to be horribly sunburned due to exposure, which is why I need a can opener. Well, I mean, I don't need a can opener for the sunburns. I need it because there are no crops, there's no fresh foods. Only cans. There's enough grain stored on this planet to feed the population for 2 months. After that, 1 billion people could starve to death. 1 billion. That's 13% of the entire population. 13% of everyone alive that would just be gone. This reminds me of a line from T.S. Eliot's The Hollow Men. This is the way the world ends. Not with a bang, but a whimper. In 10 years, the clouds will clear. The soot will fall down finally from above, and the temperatures will begin to rise. And what will be left of us? You could say that the world had ended. You could say that we've given up hope. Or you could say something else. Where we stand is not destroyed. We are not in ruins, but in something waiting to be built, waiting to begin again. From these ashes, we can rise and create beauty. The crumbling walls are not a representation of our failures, but a reminder of the lessons we have learned. So we continue on, not because we want to, but because we have to. In the words of Carl Sagan, a new consciousness is developing, which sees the Earth as a single organism, and recognizes that an organism at war with itself is doomed. One of the great revelations of the age of space exploration is the image of the Earth finite and lonely. We are one planet. And, as always, thanks for watching. Vsauce. I'm Jake, and it is good to have some company out here. I've been alone for quite some time. Now, we are currently headed 10,000 light years away from Earth. You actually just passed Alpha Centauri on your way in here. It's our closest star system to our own solar system at 4.3 light years away. We're about 25.7 trillion miles. Now, this would have taken a very long time with older technology, but here in the future, well, we can travel at 99.99% the speed of light. That is much faster than what you're probably used to. The fastest speed a manned spacecraft achieved in your time was Apollo 10 at 24,790 miles per hour. That would have taken over 100,000 years to get to Alpha Centauri. So scientists tried to create ships that were even faster. Project Orion is the most well-known. It used nuclear pulse propulsion, atomic bombs being detonated at intervals behind the ship to propel itself forward. Orion, even though it was incredibly forward-thinking and would have pushed us closer than ever to interplanetary travel, never came to fruition in part because of the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty in 1963. Theoretically, a fusion-powered Orion could achieve velocities up to 10% the speed of light, meaning it would only take 44 years to make the journey to Alpha Centauri. Of course, all this assumes that you don't want to slow down at the other end. Carrying enough fuel to slow down doubles the travel time. One of the difficult let me clear this, there we go. One of the difficult aspects of long-distance space travel is acceleration. It isn't instant, it can't be for manned missions. When we start talking about 10, 25, 50% the speed of light, accelerating there is a slow process. Getting to just 1% would take 36 days. If you hit the thrusters and immediately accelerated to that speed, you'd be instantaneously killed due to the immense G-force. And then what remained of your body would make the cockpit look like abstract art. There are a lot of things to factor when it comes to interstellar travel. For one, space isn't empty. There are dust clouds, space debris. When you are going at these immense speeds, at say half the speed of light, just hitting a piece of debris the size of a quarter would be equivalent to being hit by a 15-kiloton atomic bomb. Energy is another. The amount of energy needed to accelerate a metric ton spacecraft, like this one at even half the speed of light, would require 2 months worth of the entirety of Earth's energy output, and another 2 months worth to slow down. Quick side note, our craft is incredibly light. A NASA space shuttle weighs about 2,000 times more and would require 2,000 times the amount of energy. At the speed we are currently traveling, 99.99%, it requires in total 20 years worth of Earth's energy output. But the one I find the most debilitating, the one I'm currently experiencing, is loneliness. Space feels limitless, but there are limits. Communications can only travel as fast as the speed of light. There is no way currently known for that to be any different. So you find yourself alone. In movies, they always showed home base communicating immediately with the ship. But the fact of the matter is, the further out you go, the longer it takes. So by the time you receive that message, the people that sent it are most likely not going to be around to hear your response. On an interstellar mission, it isn't so much who you talk to, but how many. Speaking of messages, if you were wondering why I'm traveling 10,000 light years away, it's because we received a message from an alien civilization at that distance. So good, luckily we can hop in our 99.99% speed of light ship and get there in 14 years. One way. However, time isn't a straight line. Time is relative and doesn't move at a constant rate. The faster you move through space, the slower you move through time, relative to anything not going that speed. For example, at our current speed, what is a 28-year round-trip mission for me is 20,000 years for everyone on planet Earth. And this leads us all to a specific limitation, a specific boundary of what is possible, a limit to what we can do. Here, I actually got a message from another interstellar traveler named Matt O'Dowd from the ship PBS Spacetime. Let's pull it up. There we go. Oh, the light cone.
We start with space-time. Well, a representation of it. We have 2 dimensions of space instead of 3 because we replace the vertical axis with time. At the bottom is the beginning of the universe, and time ticks forward moving up. A planet forms 10,000 light years away from us. It moves through time, aging and evolving. At some point, an alien civilization on the planet starts sending radio waves moving at light speed through the universe. Earth also forms, and during one of their signals' 10,000-year journeys, we become a technological civilization and intercept the now ancient transmission. Because of this, we send a starship, your ship, on a mission to find our distant neighbors. And this is where our past light cone comes in. This cone defines all that we can see of the past universe, limited by the speed of light. The point at which that transmission was sent was long ago, but that moment is within our past light cone. However, the planet continues to move through time. Their civilization has now gone outside the light cone. But there's hope. We also have a future light.
That was all of Matt's message that I received. But what he was going on to say was that there is the past light cone and the future light cone. As I fly along the diagonal of our future light cone, the hope is to intercept this planet that sent us a message. But here's the rub. So much time has passed since that message was sent that by the time I reach this planet, who knows if the race that sent it is still there? Or for that matter, the planet. Either way, I have to head back home after, but Earth continues to move through time as well. And as it does, I'll move back towards it, hopefully to intercept. The future light cone represents the part of the universe that we could ever hope to travel to or communicate with. The boundary of the cone is the boundary for communication, or travel at the speed of light. We can never interact with anything outside that cone. It's important to remember that points both inside and outside the cone are events, not places. They're moments in both time and space. You can get to any point in space if you travel for long enough, ignoring the expanding universe, but there are moments in space that are unreachable, no matter how fast you travel. So by the time I reach my destination, who knows what will be there? Who knows if the civilization that sent that message will remain, since it took 10,000 years for their signal to reach us, and an additional 10,000 for me to reach them. I went out searching for what we thought was known, when we should always be searching for the unknown. And after I fulfill my mission, I fly back home, a place that I won't have known for 28 years from my perspective. On Earth, 20,000 years have passed. Think about what life was like 20,000 years ago as compared to the present. Think about what life must be like now. All the events, the people, the moments that have gone by in an instant. We think of the present and dream of the future, not really considering that what we do today could impact the next generations. When you look into this vastness, you think of all the possibilities. You wish that maybe 20 years earlier someone else would have done this journey, so we'd be even just the slightest bit further. We would have pushed just a tiny bit more to understand the incomprehensible. It's funny out here. I spent a lot of time thinking of early explorers, early pioneers. If you had told someone in the 19th century that they'd be able to get from one side of the United States to the other in 5 hours instead of 6 months, they'd think you were crazy, that no person could travel that quickly, that it couldn't be done. People would get on ships and set sail for months to get from one point on the planet to another, not knowing if they'd make it, not knowing what would be waiting for them on the other side, not knowing what would happen to those they left behind. We thought our ships were our speed limit until we pushed through that supposed limit and created something better. Limits. Limits. Just like we have a speed limit in space to how fast a message can travel, so did they. The ones they left not knowing if they had made it until months later, when a letter on a very similar journey would hopefully make its way back. I traveled to the unknown only to return to another unknown. Like the explorers who pushed across the seas and cut through the wilderness on Earth, discovering what to them were new lands. We too must make the sacrifice to explore the universe, not knowing what will be on the other side of this ocean of stars, but with the hope that our journey will further our curiosity, further our humanity. We might be confined by the light cone. It might be a limit, but it won't stop me from trying. And, as always, thanks for watching.